Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most complex and long-standing geopolitical situations of our time, the relationship between the United States and Iran. For decades, these two nations have been locked in a tense standoff, and in recent years, the US has ramped up its pressure campaign. But what does this pressure actually look like? Why is it happening? And most importantly, what are the real-world consequences? Let's break it all down. To understand the present, we need a quick look at the past. The turning point was the 1979 Iranian Revolution, which overthrew the US-backed Shah and established the Islamic Republic. This event, along with the subsequent hostage crisis at the US Embassy in Tehran, shattered diplomatic ties. Since then, the relationship has been defined by mistrust and hostility. Fast forward through decades of proxy conflicts, mutual accusations, and moments of near confrontation, and you'll find the core issues remain largely the same: Iran's nuclear ambitions, its influence in the Middle East, its ballistic missile program, and its support for various groups the US considers terrorist organizations. The main tool in the US pressure playbook is, without a doubt, economic sanctions. These aren't just simple trade restrictions. We're talking about a comprehensive strategy, often called maximum pressure. This strategy aims to cripple Iran's economy by targeting its most vital sectors, especially its oil and gas industry, which is the lifeblood of its government revenue. Sanctions prevent Iran from selling its oil on the international market, block its access to the global financial system, and penalize any country or company that does business with them. Think of it like an economic quarantine. The goal is to squeeze Iran's finances so tightly that it can no longer fund its military activities, its missile development, or its regional allies like Hezbollah in Lebanon or the Houthis in Yemen. The idea is that this economic pain will force the Iranian leadership to come back to the negotiating table and agree to a more restrictive deal than the one signed in 2015. That 2015 deal, officially known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA, is a crucial piece of this puzzle. It was a landmark agreement between Iran and several world powers, including the United States. Under the JCPOA, Iran agreed to severely limit its nuclear program and allow for rigorous international inspections. In return, the crippling economic sanctions against it were lifted. Supporters of the deal hailed it as a diplomatic victory that successfully prevented Iran from developing a nuclear weapon. However, critics, including many in the US, argued it didn't go far enough. They pointed out that it didn't address Iran's ballistic missile program or its regional activities. This brings us to 2018, a pivotal year. The US unilaterally withdrew from the JCPOA, calling it a terrible, one-sided deal. Following the withdrawal, the maximum pressure campaign was officially launched, and all the previous sanctions were not only reimposed but also expanded. The US aimed to bring Iran's oil exports down to zero. This move put the US at odds with its European allies, the UK, France, and Germany, who were also signatories to the deal and wanted to preserve it. They argued that pulling out would only encourage Iran to restart its nuclear activities, which is precisely what happened. In response to the renewed sanctions, Iran began gradually breaching the limits set by the JCPOA, enriching uranium to higher levels and installing more advanced centrifuges. So, has this maximum pressure campaign worked? Well, it's complicated. From an economic standpoint, the impact has been devastating for Iran. The country's currency, the rial, has plummeted in value. Inflation has skyrocketed, making everyday goods unaffordable for millions of ordinary Iranians. The sanctions have caused widespread unemployment and severely hampered Iran's ability to import essential goods, including medicine and medical equipment, which became a critical issue during the global health crisis. So, in terms of causing economic pain, the campaign has been incredibly effective. But the key question is whether this economic pain has translated into the desired political changes. Has Iran stopped its support for regional proxies? Has it dismantled its missile program? Has it agreed to a new, stricter nuclear deal? The answer to these questions is largely no. In fact, many analysts argue that the pressure has had the opposite effect. It has empowered hardliners within the Iranian regime who have always been skeptical of the West. They can point to the US withdrawal from the JCPOA as proof that America cannot be trusted to keep its promises. This has made any future diplomatic efforts even more challenging. Instead of capitulating, Iran has often responded with what it calls maximum resistance. This has included flexing its military muscles, conducting naval exercises in the strategic Strait of Hormuz, and continuing its support for allies across the region. We've also seen a rise in tensions, with incidents like attacks on oil tankers and drone strikes that have brought the two nations dangerously close to direct military conflict. The pressure isn't just economic either. There's a significant military component. The US maintains a strong military presence in the Middle East, with bases in several countries surrounding Iran, like Qatar, Bahrain, and the UAE. This presence serves as a deterrent and a strategic advantage. It allows the US to project power, gather intelligence, and respond quickly to any perceived threats from Iran or its proxies. High-profile military actions, such as the targeted strike that killed a top Iranian general in 2020, have dramatically escalated tensions, showcasing the very real risk of this Cold War turning hot. These actions are justified by the US as necessary defensive measures to protect American personnel and interests in the region. However, from Tehran's perspective, they are seen as acts of aggression and violations of sovereignty, further fueling the cycle of retaliation and mistrust. Diplomacy also plays a key role. Even amidst the pressure, the US works to build international coalitions to isolate Iran politically. This involves convincing other countries to join in sanctions, condemn Iran's actions at the United Nations, and intercept arms shipments destined for its proxies. However, this has become more difficult since the US withdrew from the nuclear deal. Key allies in Europe, while sharing many of the US's concerns about Iran's behavior, disagree with the strategy of maximum pressure. They believe engagement and diplomacy are more effective tools. Meanwhile, other global powers like China and Russia have often taken a different approach, maintaining economic ties with Iran and sometimes acting as spoilers to US diplomatic efforts. This creates a complex global chessboard where different powers are all trying to advance their own interests. Looking forward, the path is uncertain. The current US administration has expressed a willingness to return to diplomacy and potentially revive the JCPOA, but the landscape has changed. Both sides have set preconditions for re-engagement. The US wants Iran to return to full compliance with the original deal before sanctions are lifted, while Iran insists that the US must lift the sanctions first, since it was the one to leave the agreement. This who goes first dilemma has created a diplomatic stalemate. Furthermore, any new deal would likely face intense political opposition both in Washington and Tehran. Hardliners on both sides remain deeply skeptical of making concessions. The story of US pressure on Iran is a stark reminder of how difficult international relations can be. It's a mix of economic warfare, military posturing, and stalled diplomacy, with the lives of millions of ordinary people hanging in the balance. The strategy of maximum pressure has inflicted severe economic damage but has arguably failed to achieve its primary political goals, instead leading to an escalation of both Iran's nuclear program and regional tensions. As things stand, the situation remains a delicate and dangerous balancing act, with the potential for miscalculation and conflict always lurking just beneath the surface. The world continues to watch, hoping that a path back to dialogue can be found before the pressure reaches a breaking point. What do you think is the best path forward? Should the pressure continue, or is it time for a new diplomatic approach? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this breakdown helpful, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into global affairs. See you in the next video.